Good afternoon and welcome to Facebook Live. I'm joined today by Jeremy Hassan. He's the Chief Operating Engineer for the Sewers and Streets Bureau in the county's Department of Environmental Services. Welcome, Jeremy.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody.
Thanks for joining us today. So milling and paving started this week in Arlington, so we thought what better time to talk about something that a lot of residents probably experience maybe on a day-to-day basis, and that's potholes.
Absolutely.
So we've seen a lot in the news how it's been particularly bad for certain roads in the area. So we're wondering, how's it been for Arlington roads this winter with potholes?
Yeah, every winter obviously is the worst time for the region. It's expected. Currently, I would say it's been a moderate winter for the most part. The Mid-Atlantic region, we typically for 4 or 5 months get above and below freezing. So it's a moderate winter, whether or not we got 20 inches of snow or 10 inches of snow. But we've gotten close to about 3,000 potholes this calendar year already, with 1,600 this month alone and climbing. So it's a moderate year to say, but overall, I would say we're pretty on top of it. The numbers are staying within reach, and we're typically getting there within a week, 5 or 7 days to be able to fill things, if not much quicker in most instances.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about what exactly causes potholes. We see these big holes on the ground, but where are they actually coming from? Is it weather? Is it big trucks driving over it? Is it snow equipment? What are all the reasons that we're seeing these potholes?
Sure. That is a great question. I think it's a lot of different variables. The primary variable is asphalt and concrete are both pervious surfaces, meaning that water can infiltrate down into them. And once that happens during freeze and thaw cycles in the wintertime, you get a little bit of moisture water down into them. It expands when it freezes, and it starts to nudge that material and eventually will pop and make a pothole. Any cracks or cuts from utilities, private developments, anything like that could exacerbate it if they're not treated or filled properly. But mostly starts as the moisture freeze and thaw, and then again, snowplows can add to it if it's above grade. Heavier trucks can deteriorate a little bit quicker, but mostly it's the temperatures in the region. The more freeze thaw cycles you have can exacerbate that and make it a little bit worse. And you're chasing that in the Mid-Atlantic region for a good 4 to 5 months out of the year on average.
Oh, interesting. Okay. If you are tuning in on Facebook, we encourage you to ask any questions you might have about potholes. Jeremy here is the expert on them, so he'll be sure to get your answer to you. We're watching here on the monitor, so just ask away as soon as they come in. So the county obviously has some money set aside for filling potholes, just like we do for snow removal and other maintenance for streets. So what exactly is the budget that we have for filling potholes, and does that vary year to year, or what's it looking like now?
Well, currently on the operational side, where my teams typically work, we have crews for different types of work, and we do have a 5-man crew that work on potholes year-round. It includes a pothole patcher unit that can deliver, while we pick up hot asphalt from the plants, we drive that to the site, and we have a team of people who will clean the hole, cut the hole, clean the hole, fill it. We also have another crew that also works on more larger patches, full-depth patches is what we call them. But basically, between one of those crews that's dedicated year-round, the other one can fill in as needed, and we can pull in other teams from our asphalt, sewers, and even water departments if and when our numbers get large enough during Pothole Palooza, for example. But typically, we just have a normal operational crew that year-round fills potholes and pull in additional assistance as needed. We don't have a particular budget number per se, more so the FTEs and equipment associated with that crew.
Okay. Now I'm seeing a question here coming in from one of our residents, Jessica. She wants to know, how many potholes exactly do we get in a year?
It varies. Right now, for example, we've gotten about 1,600 potholes filled this month alone. Last month, I think we got about 1,000. So we're pushing close to 3,000 this year. And I would say in historical years, you're probably looking at the 2,000 to 3,000 range. It's pretty moderate. This year, obviously over the years too, our accounting metrics get a little bit better. So our systems, where we're able to capture exactly how many potholes we do. So it could be a combination of either this winter was a little bit more harsh than previous, which the last couple winters weren't that bad, terrible, compared to maybe 2009 and some of the other years. And also, just again, our metrics are getting better, and we're capturing the numbers a lot more efficiently. But I would say probably 3,000 to 5,000 per year is probably on average, plus or minus, given the weather and a lot of other variables.
Wow, that really puts it into perspective. Like just driving around, you might come across 1 or 2 on your commute to work, but not seeing the big picture of that the crews are out there filling 3,000 to upwards of 5,000 a year.
Yeah, and again, we have over 1,000 lane miles in the county. And that does not include some state roads that the VDOT would maintain and some federal and private streets throughout the county. But 1,000 lane miles, we have one dedicated team year round, and that's what they do. The numbers do add up. There's a big spike during the winter and end of winter months, but even year round, we typically get calls, and we're out there always trying to find them. So we do appreciate the help in the public using report a problem or calling in to let us know where those are so that we can get out there and fix them as quickly as possible before they get larger and cause more issues to the traveling public.
That's great. You actually answered a question we just got in from Katie, who was wondering how you can best report a pothole. And the easiest way to do that is to use our online tool, Report a Problem, and that way that your crew gets notified and can actually go out there and address it.
Absolutely, that's the best way to do it. The sooner that we're notified, we can actually go out there, have somebody investigate first. There is some clarification that sometimes there are non-county responsible potholes. They may be private utility cuts from Washington Gas, Comcast, Dominion, other utilities, private developers, private streets, things to that nature. So we do need to go out and verify that it is a county responsibility to fill that pothole, and then we will go out. And then even when it's not a county responsible issue, we will notify the appropriate person or company, utility, whatever, to make sure that they go ahead and take care of that on themselves. So there's a couple avenues that we need to investigate first, but the sooner that it's sent over to us, we can get somebody out there, investigate it, and hopefully assign it to a crew and get it done, or notify the appropriate party to get it done for us.
That makes sense. So we've talked about, I guess kind of like how potholes are formed over the winter, and then we've talked about what the best ways to report them. Mm-hmm. So I feel like the natural next step is, how are they fixed? Like, what happens when your crew shows up to a pothole? How does it get fixed?
So once we go out there, we try to, because again, 1,000 lane miles in the county, we can't go all over the county. We try to do it as efficiently as possible. So we do a little planning exercise in the office geographically. We try to locate which area has the highest density of potholes, or we try to go in a certain area where we can get around the county in a week or two, so we don't leave somebody hanging for 3 weeks. We try to prioritize and centralize them. But a crew will go out in a team or teams, depending on how many crews we have at the time. They will actually cut around the hole to make it a good square. They'll, depending on the patch repair, some are skim patches where you just fill in the top. But if it's an actual true pothole repair to prevent it from coming back in the future, you'll cut a nice square, remove the material, clean it out, get the loose material out. You put a tacking material down there. It's kind of like an adhesive layer between the new material and the existing layer. And then we actually pick up hot asphalt when it's available through the paving plants, asphalt plants in the region. We'll bring that material in, put it into the hole. We'll tamp it down and make sure that it's tamped down to the proper density. And then we'll, make sure it's ready for the travel. And it's pretty much open right after that. But again, you do have several trucks out there blocking traffic. It's a very safety-sensitive operation, so safety of our workers is always priority number one. So we typically would have a crash truck continuator or a blocker truck in the back and have the actual crews working in front of it. So if you see 2 or 3 trucks out there, that's normal. We want to make sure our people are safe. But it's a mobile operation, so they're continually moving throughout the day, hitting as many potholes as possible. And yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. We have a question here from Connie, who says, she often reports big potholes around the county, but what about streets with several small ones? Is it still the same process?
Absolutely. We prioritize based on severity. If there's something in there that mentions it caused an accident or is a huge safety concern, we'll try to get out there as soon as possible. For other smaller ones, again, we'll try to locate geographically. It doesn't matter if it's on a dead-end residential street or a primary arterial. We will go out and make sure that every pothole that we get reported gets investigated and responded to in a timely fashion.
And now you mentioned using hot asphalt to fill it in, but you mentioned when it's available. So is that not always available? And so are there different options to what you might actually fill a pothole with?
Absolutely. So hot asphalt's only typically provided for certain times of the year. Obviously, when paving operations in the region go down, asphalt plants, they will shut down periodically for a month or two in the winter when the temperatures drop below freezing. But there are other products out there that you can buy in bagged or bucket forms that are less resistant to weather per se. So we do have 3 or 4 other products that we have off the VDOT approved cold material. They call it cold patch materials list. So we do use various products, and again, it's based on availability, and we do have a few that we can use in wet conditions as well. Some can require dry conditions, others require wet. So we have versatility of products that we can use depending on the time of year, temperatures, and the conditions out at the time.
So does that speak to some of the products being like sort of temporary versus a little more permanent when you're filling a pothole?
There is most of the products that we use, we call them permanent materials, hot mix and some of these alternative VDOT approved mixes. There is a cold mix that a lot of people have to use, unfortunately, when the asphalt plant's down and you don't have some of these other products on hand, or it's a very large patch. There is a cold mix product. However, the non-beneficial factor to that is it's easy to use, you can store it for long periods of time, but it does need to be replaced. It's not a permanent fix. So when at all possible and feasible, we try to use permanent materials, either hot mix or VDOT approved cold permanent materials, and we try to limit the use of cold mix. However, it is widely needed in certain situations when we have water main breaks and things like that, and our sister department needs to make repairs, but it does require another repair to be done afterwards. So we do try to prioritize and use it where it makes sense.
Okay, great. A question I've heard from some residents on our Twitter, which is Arlington VA, and you can also follow Arlington DES on Twitter at Arlington DES, which is that people have said that, especially during milling and paving season, that their street looks fine. So why is it being repaved on a regular basis?
So there's a lot of calculations and analysis and that goes into paving throughout the region, not just here in Arlington County. I used to work in other jurisdictions as well. But basically, what most jurisdictions are doing now, including Arlington County, we rate our streets from a 0 to 100 scale. And we call that the Pavement Condition Index, PCI. And what that allows us to do is every year we do a survey of the roads in the county, and it's done by a contractor who drives a piece of equipment that uses various technology, sound, roughness via video. They can find cracks, how many patches. It's based on the square footage. So if it's a smaller street that has 10 cuts versus a larger street that has 10 cuts, it can basically get an overall score where 100 being perfect, brand new pavement, 0 meaning the road's gone. And basically using that, we have an analysis from block to block, and they can use those numbers to help prioritize which technologies are used, 2-inch mill and pave, full depth rebuilt, you can do slurry paving, micro sealing. There's a lot of different technologies, but basically it gives us a baseline of which streets really need it, depending on the score. Now, one of the things you also want to keep in mind too is milling and paving, you're shaving off that 2 inches on the top and putting a new 2-inch layer down. Prior to that happening, if you can catch it a couple years before that, there's other micro surfacing and sealing technologies that can extend the life, so you don't have to do that 2-inch mill and pave. And just for number's sake, we have about an $11 to $12 million budget right now for road resurfacing in general. About $10 million of that is 2-inch mill and pave, but there's another $1 million to $2 million in those other technologies that I mentioned, microsurfacing, slurry sealing, and full depth building, where if a street gets too low on the physical condition where you can't mill and pave, it needs to be completely rebuilt, that costs a lot more. So you don't want a road to get too low in a score, because then you're spending a lot more capital resources to bring that back up. The sweet spot is right where that mill and pave is, and then higher than that, if you can catch it and put some slurry seal or some microsurfacing, it may extend that for another 5 to 10 years before you need to go back and do some 2-inch mill and pave. So it's a lot of science and technology trying to find where those sweet spots are. There's a lot of research and development out there that say between these two scores you can use these different technologies, but we are looking at those and trying to use the plethora of toolbox items in the toolbox to basically efficiently use our budget and to expand our amount of roads that we can touch each year.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's great. Yeah. And you mentioned obviously weather affects and in a lot of instances creates potholes. How does the weather affect the actual filling of potholes? It was a very wet year last year. It was another wet winter. It's starting off already as a very wet 2019. So does that interfere with you guys actually filling the potholes?
Well, we can be out there filling potholes, rain or shine. Obviously, we have standby crews 24/7. If we get a call in the middle of the night and it's raining, or even if there's still snow on the ground, we can fill a pothole. Obviously, the better the conditions are, the more efficient our crews can be. But again, getting back to hot mix, the availability of that and/or alternative mixes, and always having the availability of the cold mix. Usually, temperature, time, weather doesn't impact per se. Can we do it? However, it may impact whether or not we're filling for that particular day. So again, usually doesn't impact us as much as you would think. However, if it's raining for a week at a time, we may not get as many potholes filled that week than for a a week of sunshine. And the other thing to keep in mind too, the crews that are out there performing these asphalt patches, they work year round in doing their normal job duties. For example, if we have one crew out year round doing potholes, but we have other teams to pull on. But if we're in the middle of a snow emergency, for example, these are the same guys that jump into a plow for 12-hour shifts. So when we're in snow operations or snow prep or breaking down at the end of a storm, we will not be filling potholes during that same time. So there are some throughout the winter, we can fill outside of some snow emergencies. Those are some non-operational days that we lose some productivity from those. But as soon as we get back into the next day or a couple days later, we're back into filling potholes immediately.
Okay, great. All right, well, I think that's about all our time this afternoon. I want to thank Jeremy for stopping by today and telling us all about potholes. And once again, what's the best way for a resident to report or to let you guys know about a pothole?
Yep, if you go to the Arlington County website, and you can go to report a problem, and when you report, just hit pothole, submit it. Pictures are even better so we can locate the issue as quickly as possible.
Well, that's great. Thanks again, and thank you for joining us today. Drive safe out there.
Thank you very much.